Kushi Kushi, we internet people dem. My name is Yiks Sanderson. I am the head of the educational department here at Apex Multimedia, and this is African Gear Reviews. Today we're going to be talking about the one and only Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. And of course it's a mouthful. Now, I have been using this camera for over 4 years now, and we here at Apex Multimedia, we've been using this camera here in Sierra Leone for about 2.5 years. And during that time, we have come to learn a lot. We've come to understand this camera's in and outs, its good sides, its bad sides, and we just figured we'd just hop online here and give you guys what we've learned. One thing that we really do love about this camera and why we keep using it is its picture quality. It gives you some phenomenal picture quality that does really well in low light. It's got decent dynamic range, and it gives you a large 6K image. That is why we keep using this, and I don't think for the price range you're going to get a camera that gives you a better picture quality. Another great thing that we have found using this camera is the simple fact that it uses Canon EF mount for its lenses gives us the ability to utilize a lot of other lenses. A lot of lenses are available in the EF format, and it's been around for decades now, so lenses are everywhere. Every city you go to here in Sierra Leone, somebody has a Canon lens, right? That is less true for other cameras such as the Sony. E-mounts are available here, however not as prolific as the EF mount, as the Canons, and that gives us a lot of options for the lenses. It also means we can get a lot of cheap lenses as well. Even if we're shopping in the States and having it shipped over here, I can get really good, cheap, old vintage lenses for not that much. For instance, like this Jupiter 9 series lens that I love. It's one of my favorite lenses. It has a really nice soft picture quality to it, but I got this I think for like 40 bucks. And the ability to just get these lenses is really underrated here in Sierra Leone. A lot of people don't think about it, but getting good glass is one of the best things you can do for your filmmaking. But at the end of the day, the thing that keeps bringing us back to it is its picture, is the footage that we get out of the camera. It's when we sit down at the editing bay and look over footage and we say, dang, that's a beautiful shot. That is a gorgeous shot, and we could not make it without this camera. So picture quality, at the end of the day, some of the best you're going to get. Another great thing about this is its price point. If you're looking to get into a more high-end cinema camera and you're just starting out, this camera will probably be a good one for you as far as its price point goes. It's around $2,500 to $2,600, give or take plus tax. But for what you get out of it, you're getting a lot for that money. The picture quality is phenomenal. It has a ton of features that come with this as a cinema camera, including internal ND filters, RAW recording, XLR inputs, all those things that you need to do a proper job on a cinema job. This camera has for absolutely dirt cheap prices. This camera is priced less like a cinema camera and more like a DSLR or like a mirrorless. It's pretty much similar in pricing to like an A7S or a Canon R5 than it is, say, like a Canon C70 or a Sony FX3. Those will get you, $6,000 or like $3,500, $4,000. But this camera, really cheap, which is very valuable for you and your pocketbook. I mentioned before the B-RAW. So B-RAW I have found phenomenally well. It records really good images. It's got great compression that lets you reduce the file sizes while keeping a decent amount of quality in your footage. And because B-RAW is what's called semi-debayered, it plays really well on computers. Most cameras, when you record a video, it takes the image from the sensor and processes it and converts it into a playable image through like an MOV file or an MV4 file or some kind of container or video file. RAW does not do that. RAW file just takes the image from the camera sensor and records it without doing any debayering. And debayering is a process of converting it from raw information to video information. However, this camera, and B-RAW specifically, does do what's called semi-debayering, which it starts the process of converting that information from the camera sensor information to a video file, but it doesn't complete that process. And so what this does is it allows you to still have the sort of control that you want from a RAW system, such as your ability to change the ISO, your ability to control a lot of the colors, the highlights, the lowlights, the shadows, all of those things, but it plays phenomenally well on a computer. I've worked with other RAW systems, mainly the Red system, and that requires a lot of processing power on your computer, and every time I would edit with them, I would have to, of course, convert it to proxies. With this B-RAW, even if I'm editing in 6K, I don't have to proxy it out. I can edit it straight, which means you don't need as powerful of a machine in order to run this RAW, right? Another great thing that we have discovered is Autochroma B-RAW Studio. This is a plugin for Premiere that lets you edit the RAW footage in Premiere. You don't have to take it to another program. You don't have to kick it out to Resolve, do your color editing there, and kick it back. You can do everything right there in Premiere, right under Lumetri. Now, we really like that just because it lets us move faster, it lets us edit quicker, it lets us do our coloring a lot faster, and I kind of like being able to, you know, edit the RAW stuff and edit Lumetri at the same time to sort of get the proper balance between the two. And it lets me mess with all those settings right there in Premiere. Speaking of Resolve, another low-key really great benefit of this camera is the fact that it is super compatible with Resolve. Both are made by Blackmagic, right? And that lets you, edit the footage really well. It makes the editing process easier. And Resolve is something that you might want to consider because it's free, or there is a free version of it. I know a lot of times in Africa, and certainly here in Sierra Leone, we have a very hard time getting the money to pay Adobe $60 a month to use their software. Resolve has got a good option for free. Now, of course, it is a light version. It is not the full pro version, and there's a lot of features that are missing from it, but it still does a lot of the stuff that you need from a good editing system, and they do it for free. And this camera works phenomenally well with it. So another thing to consider if you get this camera, maybe switch over to Resolve. If Premiere is giving you a hard time, Resolve's there. Another great thing about this camera is that it utilizes a lot of really good cheap media options, such as SD cards, CFast, and of course, the SSD. It works directly with simple generic flash drives like the Samsung T5 or the Samsung T7, and that retails for about $300 for a 500 gigabyte drive. And that'll run you a decent amount of time. There is a problem with the size of the files that you get out of this, so 500 gigabytes won't last you very long. But we have this 2 terabyte one, and we go out on multi-day shoots, and we're fine for multiple days of shooting all day long. And the price tag on these is not too expensive. It also, of course, does work with SD cards and CFast or CF Express. A problem that you'll find is that for the SD cards, the write speed is not going to be enough in order for you to really record in 6K RAW. So you're gonna need something else like an expensive CFast or a cheap Samsung SSD drive. So media compatibility is very good. Of course, it does have CFast, but as we all know, CFast is fairly expensive, and it's not that readily available here in Sierra Leone. These things are becoming far more common here, and throughout much of West Africa, you can find these Samsung T5s around. There are options for it, so something to consider. It's got really good media. Another thing that surprised me about the things I like about this camera is the 6K footage. Now, I used to think that I don't really need 6K. I don't really see the value in it. I export to 1080 all of the time, and really if I want to do reframing, I just shoot 4K and that's fine. Now that I've worked with this for years, the 6K is phenomenally useful. It is so useful, and it's gotten to the point where it has changed a lot of our workflow, and it'll change a lot of how we shoot. The ability to reframe and punch in and out is ridiculous with this camera. We can go from a medium shot to a close-up without losing any quality like that, with no problems at all. And that also really helps us with our live shooting. Anytime we're doing any events, anytime we're doing any live coverage, anytime we're doing any of that stuff, or we can't repeat stuff, this becomes very, very useful to be able to resize and reframe our shots. So what we do is, we shoot in 6K, and then I can bring that into our editor, and I can just, copy the video file multiple times, cut from a full shot to a medium full to a medium shot, and right away I can just stack those up, throw those into a multicam editing system, and I've got one of our cameras is now doing 3 shots for us. It is phenomenally useful. And that really surprised me, but it's changed a lot of how we worked, and now we work a lot faster because of it. Something else that we have really enjoyed about this camera is it is surprisingly good at low light. This is vitally important for our work here in Makeni and in Sierra Leone, because electricity is not a guarantee for us, right? There's plenty of times where we'll go out and shoot, and we'll be coming up to dusk and just getting past dusk, and power for a large chunk of the city just goes out for hours on hours and hours on end. So a lot of times you would have to just call the shoot. You're done. We've got to go home. With this camera, we've been on multiple shoots where there's been no power, no lights, we're past dusk, and we're still able to get a lot of really good images out of the camera, out of the sensor. And that has a lot to do with the dual native ISO, the fact that it switches its native ISO once you get past 1250. And it has a lot to do with its sensor. It has a really good sensor. Again, not as good as a Sony for low light, nothing ever is. But this is a good quality option. When we're shooting out past dusk and we're getting that really good quality footage, our lenses are doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. We have this Sigma lenses that we like to use, this, and we have an 18 to 35, and these open up to 1.8. And of course, one of my favorite lenses is Jupiter. Old vintage lens opened up to a 2.0. So we are able to let in a lot of light with these lenses, but the sensor is doing a lot of work to be able to utilize the light that we're able to bring in. We've worked with other cameras, the GH5, even when we're doing like a speed booster and throw one of these lenses on there, it still can't do low light. And of course, it's a micro four thirds sensor, not known for doing good for low light. But this camera does do pretty well for low light, which again has been a necessity for us when we're shooting here in Africa. So those are all the good things, the things that we love about the camera, what keeps us coming back to this thing. But now we gotta talk about the problems, because there are a lot. And if you are shooting in Africa, if you're an African shooting in this context, you gotta know these things before you buy this camera. First off, batteries. This thing eats batteries. It eats them. We go through dozens of batteries. We have over 25 batteries that we use for our shooting. And we will burn through more than 20 batteries in a single day of shooting. No problem. So be aware of that, because you need power. This thing needs power. We go through all of these things so much, so often. So be aware of that. Be ready for that, because you're gonna need power solutions. Now, there are solutions. I really like that they switched to this NP battery. It's a Sony battery. It works for everything. Some of our lights use it, our monitors use it. This thing plugs into almost every device that we have, which means it's readily available. You can find these all over the continent, but you're gonna need a lot of them. So one of the solutions that we have, of course, that we use is the external extension. It lets us just put in 2 extra batteries, which means we have 3 batteries as a whole. This still doesn't really even last us an hour. Each battery, lasts us maybe 20 minutes, probably mostly less. So we're having to swap out batteries all the time. Now, this makes it pretty easy because all I have to do is just open it, pull it out, swap out the batteries, put it back in. So it's fairly quick. It's not a tedious endeavor, but you do have to do it constantly. And you need a lot of these. Another solution, V-mount. V-mount is a very good solution, but it's not the cheapest solution. You will spend a significant amount of money for a good V-mount battery. You'll spend $100, $200 for a good V-mount battery. There's plenty of them out there, but you will need to get that shipped in. I don't know many people in Sierra Leone that use V-mounts. I only know of a few studios that do. So you're not gonna be able to buy it here. You're gonna have to buy it from somewhere else and get it shipped in. Last option is one that we, funny enough, use a lot, and it's the simplest one. This thing does come with a wall plug, right? We plug it in and we just fire it up. If we're doing a live shooting, if I know we're gonna be shooting for a few hours and we can't really cut, we just plug it into the wall, and it'll be fine. But again, that doesn't work for going outside. It doesn't work for on set, and it doesn't even always work for the live coverage. As we said before, like power here, as I'm sure you all know, it's hard to rely on. If there's no fire in the walls, there's gonna be no fire in the camera. So those are your 3 main solutions, but you're gonna need to have one of them, and it's gonna cost you some more money. As we said, if there's no fire in the walls, there's no fire in your camera. This is also true for your batteries. Whatever battery you're getting, if there's no fire in the walls, you're not gonna have any power in your batteries. Even on set, even when you have those 25, 26, 27 batteries that we're using, we're still having to charge them on set because we're still gonna need more as we keep going through the day. We like to use this power generator from Blue Yeti. Now this does have a solar component to it. We like to plug it in, and it gives us a few hundred watts of solar power. But this thing charges up to 2,500 watt hours, and it keeps us running all day. But again, this is something that we had to buy to keep this thing running on our on set. Now, this thing, of course, is not just for the camera. We use it for our lights. We use it for all of our batteries. We use it for our gimbal battery. We use it for everything. This keeps our set running, but it's just another thing to buy. It's just another thing that you have to be aware of in order to keep this camera going. So when you're out on set, if you're out in the field, you need a lot of batteries and you need a power solution to solve for that, because you and I both know the power company is not going to be a guarantee. This is trying to be a DSLR, but it is not a DSLR. It is not a mirrorless camera. It's not a cinema camera. It's not like the Ursa Mini or the Alexa, but it's still not a really good size for your hand. It's bulky, it's heavy, it's not really good for running and shooting. It doesn't do well for manual focus pulling. This thing is not built realistically for run and gun shooting. It's not built for shooting with your hand. So if you're a single shooter and you just want to grab your thing and run out and get the shots, this is not going to be the one for you. But if you're working with a team, if you need somebody to run a shoulder rig or a fly cam, or if you're running on a tripod, this does perfectly fine for all those things. But if you're a hand shooter, this one might not be the one for you. And you just have to be aware of that, because the style of shooting that you might want to use might need to change if you change to this camera. Additionally, just like the batteries, this thing takes drives. The RAW is great. It only records RAW and it only records QuickTime. It only records MOV, both of which take up a lot of memory cards. Both of them take a lot of drives, and I mean a lot of drives. We constantly have to buy and get new drives. It is the bane of our existence. We have we've got 4 20 terabyte drives that we use. Now, granted, we operate very different than a lot of other filmmakers here in Sierra Leone. We do keep all of our footage. We do keep everything archived. I know a lot of people will just be finished with their shoot, do their edit, and then delete their project. We don't do that, and that means that we have to do a lot of drive purchases. And this is difficult, especially here in Sierra Leone. These drives are not readily available. It is not easy to get a 20 terabyte drive, which means you gotta plan ahead because you're gonna have to buy these things from the States or from Europe and get it shipped in. Realistically, it's gonna be months and months ahead of time. There's no really good shipping option for this part of the world that will get you there, get you an item cheaply and quickly. You could, of course, ship it through DHL, but that realistically is going to cost you $300, $400, $500 to ship this small thing. And honestly, the drive is going to cost you less than that. So be aware of that. You need to plan ahead if you're going to use this camera, right? You need to think a few months ahead of when am I going to need that drive? How full is my other drive? How many projects do I have on the horizon? How many terabytes is that going to take up? Not how many gigabytes, how many terabytes is that one project going to take up? We've done multiple projects that have been over 2 or 3 terabytes. Then that happens all the time, you know? So you just have to be ready for that. If you are looking to ship any equipment or if you need to get some drives over here, we like to use Brunswick Shipping. They're based out of Maryland, USA. They cost, I think, about $15 or $20 per cubic foot, which is relatively cheap. But the downside to that, of course, is that you're gonna be waiting probably around 2, maybe 3 months for your items to get to Freetown. There is also MARAH River. I've never used them personally, but they're based out of the UK in case you want to get your items from the UK. I think their shipping time is relatively the same, however. So those are just 2 options if you're in Sierra Leone. If you're in other places, I'm sure that there is some shipping organization that does let you do, you know, small freight shipping that will let you get drives and stuff into your country. But again, if you get this camera, be prepared for these drives. All of these drives. These are all of the drives that we've been using for the past few years. So that's just another thing to consider. We got to talk about this. When we talked about the size, I mentioned it gets a lot of awkward, especially if you're a single run and gun shooter. This is especially true if you're running on a gimbal. This thing is so outbalanced with the gimbal. Now, unfortunately, you need the extension on the batteries, especially for gimbal work. You're gonna be taking this thing on and off the gimbal every 10, 20 minutes if you don't have the extension on. And the extension is nice because it does allow us just to hot swap the batteries. We don't have to rebalance everything. We just put the gimbal into sleep mode, pull it out, swap the batteries, put it in, and we are done and good to go. Like, we're back in action. This becomes a problem when you're talking about lenses. Now, we have these short, stout little things that are vintage. They do us pretty well, but they're not modern, right? And so the problem that we find is that because the battery lifts up the whole thing, it lifts up all of the weight. It lifts up the camera weight and it lifts up the lens weight. For this monster over here, which isn't that big of a monster, like, this is a good sized lens, but this isn't the biggest lens you're gonna find. And this thing requires us to basically max out the weight capacity of our gimbal and spend tons of time and effort balancing it and getting it correctly. Or even our smaller Sigma 18 to 35, which is not that big. We actually have to go through and use this custom-made metal weight that we sling underneath it, right, to make it balance. And that's a problem. That is an absolute problem. That adds weight to your hands, it adds weight to the gimbal, it makes it harder to maneuver, it makes it heavier, you're going to sweat more than you've ever sweat before. And that just comes with the territory of this camera. It's big, it's bulky, it's not balanced well, and all of that means that your gimbal work, if you're doing gimbal work, is gonna be more difficult. You're gonna need time before your shoot to balance this camera. I can balance our GH5 in maybe 2 minutes flat, right? Not that difficult. This camera always takes me 5 to 10 minutes at minimum. If I'm running with the big lens, our big beefy one here, I'm balancing it for maybe 15 minutes until it's good to go. And that's time that you're burning, right? And as we said, like, it gets heavy. This thing does not weigh a feather, right? So you're gonna need to switch off. You're not gonna be able to shoot like this for an hour straight. You're gonna have to do 30 minutes on, switch to your next camera operator, 30 minutes on for them, which means you need to have multiple camera operators for your projects, multiple camera operators for your shoots. For us, that's not a big deal, but if you're a young filmmaker just starting out, that might be a real problem. So consider the weight of the thing, consider the gimbal before you buy this. Now, there is another solution that we have found that might solve a lot of our problems. We haven't got it yet, but we're definitely considering it. Tilta sells a V-mount pass-through piece that replaces this bottom one with a V-mount port that you can put the V-mount battery here, and then it will let you run a cable from here to the camera. That gets rid of the need for this big, bulky extension, right? And it puts the weight under the camera, under the gimbal, so balancing it becomes a lot easier. But this is just another thing to consider when you're dealing with this camera, because it does not make life easy for you, especially on a gimbal. Another con we got to talk about, autofocus. It does not exist on this camera. Yeah, sure, you can tap the screen and it will focus on that section, but that is it. It does not track faces, it does not do continuous autofocus, it does not do pixel autofocus. It does none of that, which means you need to have a solution for your focusing, right? You're gonna need to either do it manually by hand, or we like to use the focus pull, right? We have a remote focus pull that we use. Somebody else is dedicated to off camera, right? But you need that kind of infrastructure, and you need another one of these, which again, it's just more money that you're gonna have to spend on it. So if you're a single run and gun shooter, there's not really any good autofocus for this camera. If you're working with multiple people, you might not care about autofocus. We don't really care about autofocus. We like doing manual focus. It makes our focusing, it makes our films feel a little more natural, a little more organic. It doesn't have those jitters in it. You know, a machine can't really be taught anticipation, right? It doesn't know to lead into the focus pull like a human does. So we like to use manual focus. But if you're a run and gun shooter, that's not gonna be really a good option for you. Now, there is a LiDAR system from DJI called the LiDAR rangefinder that you can utilize with this, and that will turn any lens into autofocus. But again, it's just another thing that you have to buy, another thing you have to pay money for and get shipped in here, right, to get this camera working the way you might want it. So if you need autofocus, this probably isn't the camera for you. As I said before, this is not really a run and gun shooter. If you need a camera that is going to be in the rough same price range, that'll give you a lot of benefits, but it won't have the same complications as this, I would actually highly recommend Sony's. The Sony a7S III, the Sony a7S IV. Those are phenomenal cameras. Their lenses are harder to get than the EF mounts, but they're still pretty readily available and you can definitely utilize them. A lot of filmmakers out here were using the Sony FS5 for a long time, and so those lenses are around. So you can get your hands on them and it will work pretty well. So if you need a good alternative to this camera, if you're a run and gun shooter or if you're just starting out, I would highly recommend the Sony's. So in conclusion, wrapping all this up, what we have found is we love this camera. The image quality it gives us is definitely worth it to us. And the features it has, the ND filters, its ability to do a dual native ISO, raw recording internally. All of this is phenomenal for us as filmmakers, but we've definitely had to sort of change and build our filmmaking workflow and our infrastructure around this camera. And that is something that we've definitely been willing to do, and we will continue to do so in the future. I think we're gonna stay in this ecosystem, in the Blackmagic ecosystem. We love this camera, but if you don't have the ability to take on all of the other components that this camera needs to run and function, this camera by itself does not function. Not really well. You need a ton of batteries, you need a ton of drives, you need a ton of power solutions, you need a decent amount of processing power for the 6K footage, although this does record 1080. You need a ton of infrastructure around this camera to make it function. And if you're not willing or able to build that infrastructure and take on that infrastructure, then this camera might not be the one for you. We talked about its price point before, saying it's only $2,500, but unfortunately that's just not really true in practicality. You're gonna need, again, all those different batteries cost money, all the different drives, they cost money, the battery extension costs money, the Samsung hard drive for your SSD drive for the media costs money, focus pulling costs money, the LiDAR system from DJI, that costs money. All of these things are gonna add to the cost of your camera. So if you're just starting out, if you're just a solo shooter or maybe a very small team and you kind of want to start upping your game, you want to spend a few $1,000s and get a new camera that you think will help you out, I would recommend actually staying away from the Blackmagic. But if you're a larger studio who's got, a fair amount of people who can work on this camera, who can operate this camera simultaneously, if you're willing to put in the time and effort and energy to get that infrastructure that we talked about, this might be the camera for you. If you're realistically trying to come out of the DSLR type of shooting and sort of up your game into a more cinematic style of shooting, this might be the camera for you. And that's why we still use it, that's why we love it, and that's why I think you might love it. So we hope you enjoyed our review and a little bit of our knowledge that we've acquired over the years on this thing, and we definitely hope to see you in the future.